Mexico lost a lot of territory to the United States in the 1800s, and it happened really quickly. So why did this happen? Why did Mexico lose so much territory so fast? Hi, welcome to my channel. And in this video, we are going to look at why Mexico lost so much territory to the United States in the 1800s. Now, there are a few factors that contributed to this, and we are going to look at those now. The first reason that Mexico lost so much territory so quickly is political instability. From 1821 to 1880, there were 19 different presidents in Mexico and 6 different constitutions. There were also 8 coups and 5 revolutions during this time period. One of the reasons that Mexico lost Texas so quickly is because they actually encouraged Americans to settle in the area. They encouraged Americans to come into Texas because they needed people to help populate the region and develop it. The problem was that once they invited these Americans in, they didn't follow Mexican law. This showed that it was only a matter of time until Mexico lost the war. This was over the border in the southwest corner of the United States. The U.S. wanted to purchase this land in order to build a railroad through it, so they offered to buy it from Mexico, and Mexico agreed. This purchase is known as the Gadsden Purchase, and it led to the modern borders between the United States and Mexico. And if you want to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel. By 1848, Mexico had suffered a series of devastating defeats, and they knew that they couldn't win the war. There are probably other reasons why they lost so much territory, but I think the main one has to do with the fact that there was not much of a sense of national identity or unity in Mexico. Most of the people in the northern and southern territories did not really feel connected to the central government. In fact, many of them probably felt that they were being ignored by the central government. So when the opportunity came to either become independent or join the United States, some of them jumped at the chance. So they decided to end it with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. With this treaty, Mexico gave up all claims to Texas and also ceded an additional 55% of their territory to the United States. They also received $15 million to compensate for the loss of their territory. The Mexican government required that all settlers convert to Catholicism and learn Spanish, but most Americans didn't do that. Instead, they brought their own culture and religion with them and tried to make it more like the United States. This led to a lot of tension between the Mexican government and the American settlers. This meant that no matter how much land Mexico gave up, it probably wouldn't satisfy the United States. So in the end, Mexico couldn't compete with the ambition and momentum of the United States. The settlers often rebelled against the Mexican government, and this culminated in the Texas Revolution in 1836. During this revolution, the Texans defeated the Mexican army, and they declared independence from Mexico. Even though Mexico didn't want to lose Texas, they couldn't do anything about it. Didn't have the resources to fight another war and hold on to their northern territories. The northern and southern territories were extremely empty. Mexico controlled nearly 1 million square kilometers of land in the north, and only about 150,000 people lived there. The United States annexed Texas in 1845. This meant that Texas became the 28th state of the United States, and this caused a border dispute between the two countries. The Mexican government claimed that the border was here, while the U.S. claimed that it was here. This disagreement over the border would eventually lead to the Mexican-American War. However, before we get to that, I just want to point out that even though Texas was the first territory that Mexico lost to the United States, they probably weren't too worried about it at the time. See, the war with Texas was being fought further inland, but the vast majority of people and wealth in Mexico was still located near the coast. So even though they lost Texas, they still had most of their territory and most of their population. This made it very difficult to effectively control and govern these areas. There are 2 main reasons that Mexico lost so badly in this war. The first one is because the United States had a larger and stronger military. They also had better trained and better led military forces, and these factors combined to make it so the U.S. won every major battle in the war. The second reason that Mexico lost so badly is because of the vast size of their territory. Their inability to effectively control their northern territories meant that they could undefend them against the United States. As we've already seen, much of their population and infrastructure was located in the central region of the country, while their northern territories were sparsely populated and underdeveloped. This meant that the United States was able to easily capture their northern territories without having to face the full force of the Mexican army. Also, these areas were very similar to the areas that the United States was trying to move into. The United States was moving into Texas, New Mexico, and California, while most Mexicans lived hundreds of miles away. So these were very easy areas for the US to take over, because most of the people who lived there were either Native Americans who didn't have any kind of centralized government or very few Mexicans who weren't really attached to the central government anyway due to the poor infrastructure and distance. So overall, the lack of people in these areas made it difficult for Mexico to control them, and it made it easier for the United States to take them over. So as you can tell, there was a lot of upheaval and change in Mexico during this time period. This meant that the central government was very weak, and they were unable to effectively control the entire nation. In fact, the central government was only really strong in the central region of the country. They didn't have enough power and resources to maintain a strong military, which meant that they were unable to protect their borders. And that's one of the reasons that the United States was able to take their territory. Another reason that Mexico lost so much territory so quickly is because their economy was pretty weak. They didn't have a lot of money or resources to devote towards building up a strong military or infrastructure to help control all of their territory. Much of their infrastructure was located only in the central region of the country. So if you lived in the northern or southern territories, you might not have had access to roads or other types of communication that would help you communicate with the central government. So overall, their poor economy meant that they weren't able to effectively defend themselves. And another aspect of this is that the vast majority of people who lived in Mexico also lived in the central region of the country. And speaking of Texas, let's talk about Texas specifically. And this brings us to the next reason that Mexico lost so much territory so quickly. However, Mexico would soon lose everything when the Mexican-American War broke out in 1846. In 1847, American troops captured both of Mexico's major cities, Veracruz and Mexico City. Even after losing so much territory, Mexico still had another border dispute with the United States in 1854. So those are some of the main reasons that Mexico lost so much territory to the United States in the 1800s. Another factor to consider is American expansionism. The United States was aggressively expanding westward during this time period, and they weren't going to stop until they reached the Pacific Ocean. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button.